Most people have no idea who Pol Pot is or Mao was. They don't know about the Khmer Rouge. I know I didn't. I didn't know about the scale or atrocities committed in the name of ideology. Not I didn't learn it in school, not clearly, and not honestly. And that's why I collect these stories, because our young people especially deserve to know them. My guest today is going to share her family's experience under Khmer Rouge, the Cambodian Reds. These are not abstract ideas, these are lived experiences. Today, we are once again hearing the language of collectivism dressed up as compassion, a promise of a warmer society. We're seeing people argue that others should be excluded and even executed based on how they vote. A recent study showed a growing number of college students believe it's acceptable to commit violence over someone's speech. Others insist language is about preserving dignity. I find all of this deeply authoritarian. And if you're not sure what that word really means, by the end of this conversation, I think you will. Friends, please welcome my guest, President and CEO of Mom Army, who has a very direct link to the Cambodian genocide, Seak Smith. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Yeah, I wanted to start just from the very beginning. You just let me know. I just want to hear your story.
Yeah. Yeah. So I immigrated to America as a 3-year-old refugee. So prior to landing in America, my dad, let me go back a little bit more. My dad was a drummer, so he was a musician, and he was a soldier fighting against the Khmer Rouge, the Communist Party. Those two things alone would have marked him for execution. So he had to hide his identity during a lot of this period of civil war and turmoil. He could not let people know exactly who he was. And that was across the board, all across the country. So Cambodia was going through its own civil war. It was kind of like from the geopolitical side, it was the Vietnam War bleeding into Cambodia. There was a secret bombing campaign that exceeded the amount of bombs that were being dropped on Hiroshima and on I'm forgetting the other city, but during the atomic bomb. So more bombs were being dropped in the countryside of Cambodia during the 1970s than any other campaign in American history. That's one piece of information that I found out in more recent years than I had known early on as I was researching a lot of this stuff about the genocide and all of the conflict there. So just to set the backdrop, that's what was going on geopolitically. Southeast Asia was a stronghold of the British in Thailand and then the French in Cambodia, Indo-French, China in Vietnam and Cambodia. Luckily for Cambodia, we got our independence from the French without any bloodshed. It was a very amicable situation. So what was going on was just, again, it was the spreading of communism that was happening in that region. And Cambodia was trying to be neutral. And then unfortunately, with propaganda, there was this pinning class against each other. So the countryside of Cambodia, the Chinese Communist Party, they were recruiting people in the countryside of Cambodia to pin them against what was considered the more, the upper class of Cambodia, the city people, the
like
people that were
the rural versus
yes,
city. Okay.
exactly. Same thing, same playbook. People need to really understand that it doesn't matter where the conflict was when communism comes to power. It is the same exact playbook. It's a class pinning class against each other, it's really economic, that sort of thing. So anyways, so I just wanted to give that backdrop. And of course, on April 17th, Cambodia fell to the Communist Party. The Khmer Rouge from the countryside marched into the capital of 2 million people at the time in 1975. And basically, it was a celebration at first. Everybody thought, wow, the war has ended, the civil war has ended, everything's great. Everything's going to be great. What they didn't realize was there was a campaign to lie to the people that the Americans were coming to bomb, which wasn't out of the realm because Americans were bombing the countryside for years.
Right.
So they lied. There was a big lie that the Americans were bombing the capital. Please grab your stuff. You're gonna go to the countryside for just a few days, 3 days, 4 days, whatever, and you'll be back. So don't worry about taking all your belongings. They emptied out a city of 2 million people, marched them, and this is conformity. People just believed it blindly, and they marched out. They emptied out hospitals, schools, everything. Like people were being marched up. People were dying along the way. People were, elderly, the sick, and all of that. Well,
all of that. Can I pause that for a second?
sure. Yeah.
I was just listening to some documentaries before to prepare for this, and that all of that, if people were infirm, if they couldn't move for themselves, they were hacking them to
Mhm.
death in the hospitals.
Yep. Yeah.
It's
I know. It was probably one of the most extreme, brutal communist takeover in the last century. Yeah, so they marched out. They emptied the entire capital, basically. No one was left behind. They abolished everything, right? So it's, again, back to the playbook. They abolished religion. They abolished education. They abolished currency. Nothing. Cambodia was trying to go back what they considered year zero to an agrarian society where everyone is equally a farmer and a peasant. They were really getting rid of the poisoning of Western influence, right? Cambodia was a very forward-thinking modern society. Think of Iran in the 70s before the Muslims took over. Same thing with Cambodia. We had art and music, and it was a very matriarch society, and women were in politics, and it was this beautiful, very colorful, very cultured society. And it went from that to the dark ages overnight. My dad's story, basically, he got put into one of those labor camps, concentration camps, and he realized he was being interrogated. They kept asking him questions. By the third night, he realized that they're onto him, and he kept telling them, "I'm just a farmer," when my dad was a soldier and a musician. Anyway, long story short, he hashed out a plan to escape with a buddy. And during that escape, he also, what I learned in more recent years is that my dad escaped and helped dozens of people escape with him.
Wow.
I believe it was over 40 people with him, women and children, because they were nearby. What they did was they separated people into different labor camps. There were camps for children. Children were being separated from their parents. There were camps for men and camps for women. So they, just like they're doing now in America, except, putting a wedge between parents and children, they did exactly that.
But in
And
a
they
very
bring,
physical sense, right? Because now
yes,
it's subtle. You send your
subtle.
kids to school, and they're
Mhm.
taught to separate from their families.
Correct. Yep.
But
Yeah.
there, I mean, it was like I think it's in Julie's film, but they put them in trucks and just drove
Mhm.
away from their families.
Yeah. So they put children into these separated children's camp, and they would propagandize them. I kid you not, if you look at some and I did some deep dive early on in my 20s, but they would blare this propagandized military music in the 5 o'clock in the morning to wake the kids up. And it would be these bloody murder lyrics of how they need to only listen to the state, and the state is their parents. And it was something out of a horror film is probably the best way to put it. So I'm sharing all of this so we can relate to what we're dealing with right now. And like you said, it's subtle. It's subtle, but the end game is the same, right? The end game is to control. And so anyway, so my dad hashed an escape plan, and he escaped. And I won't go into all that. I'm actually working on a feature film project about his story. But his bravery and his courage, because he knew that they were starting to figure out who he was, his identity, and he knew that if he stuck around, they would kill him. So he left and successfully crossed through the jungles. And I have to paint this picture. You were in danger of, jungle animals. You were in danger of landmines. Cambodia has the largest amputee population per capita than any other country in the world. It's because they had planted all these landmines, and they're still active landmines till this day, which is over 50 years later from the war. And so the chances of surviving an escape is pretty minuscule, because you've got to worry about the Khmer Rouge, guerrillas that were in the jungle trying to capture you. But my dad was somehow, thank the Lord, he was protected. He escaped, made it into a small village in Thailand near the border of Cambodia and Thailand, where he met my mom, because that's where she grew up. And then we got permission because he was serving in the army. We were one of the lucky families that got out of the refugee camp very quickly. I think we were in the refugee camp for 6 months. I heard families living in the refugee camps for 10 years before they can get permission to
Wow.
leave. So we were one of the lucky ones. I immigrated here in 1980 as a 3-year-old. Um, we landed in San Francisco, eventually migrated down to Los Angeles. And so I'm an LA girl, but fast forward, learning more about my own history and then correlating it to what's going on right now in America, with what we're seeing with the ICE agitators, and then, using our children to protest.
Right.
It's all playing out, and it's a warning that we have to take heed to. Is basically my message.
Agreed. When I'm watching these kids march with signs that there's no way that they wrote. The most glaring sign I saw recently said, "Fund education, not deportation."
Mhm,
Now, if a
mhm.
teacher didn't tell somebody to post that, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know a kid who would make that post, Like, and I
No.
I work with a lot of kids, and I
Our
can't do that.
children should not be straddled with geopolitical
Right.
issues. They should be children. I'm a big believer in preserving our children's innocence as long as we can. And what we're doing now as a society, I mean, of course, a lot of us are fighting against it, but it is criminal to do this to children,
We're
to
abusing them.
poison their
I mean, they're
minds.
they're abusing them. We're
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
So, but that group, when you say there's a lot of us, I feel like not really.
yeah.
Not nearly the numbers that there should be, but for sure people are standing. And I just remember the first time I met you, watching you on the big screen and sitting next to you, and just when you said, "This is the hill I will die on,"
Mhm.
because of what you've already been through. So, you weren't personally in one of the camps? How so you came here
I
when
was
you were
born after. So I
you were
was
born after.
born after the fall. So I was born in the middle of the conflict, like the concentration camps and the genocide lasted almost 4 years. So from 1975, the liberation by the Vietnamese army happened in 1970, January of 1979. So I was born in 1977. And I was born in the small village in Thailand, in my mom's village. And as my dad actually kept going back
Okay.
into the war zone to rescue more people, actually, is what I learned about him.
Oh,
So
wow.
even though he had escaped and found safety, he kept going back into the concentration camps to rescue more people into the country. Um,
He was like
lots of
a Harriet Tubman.
He was exactly like that, and I only found this out during COVID in 2021. I decided for the first time to ask my dad, like, what exactly happened? And the reason why I hadn't really dug into the details of his story was I was afraid that I was gonna re-traumatize him,
Right.
because I knew it was such a horrific time, and I wasn't sure how he would respond if I, like, pried and try to figure out what happened. The complete opposite happened. My dad was gleefully and proudly sharing his story with me. And that was the moment I realized I needed to tell my dad's story. So my husband's writing the script right now. We're working on a feature film project um, with characters, and we're going to be casting for it. It's called Echoes of Redemption. And it is going to be based on real life events and stories of my dad's escape, but built around my husband and I's love story. So it's a fantasy romantic drama. It's going to be very emotional, because the movie poses the question, and the reason why this happened. After I found the details of my dad's escape story and realizing he was like a Harriet Tubman, I go home and tell my husband, and I said, "You're not going to believe this, but this is like, I just found out what happened to my dad during that period." And my husband had this profound moment. We've been married 25 years now. We have 3 beautiful children. We met when we were 15 in high school, so we're high school sweethearts. And my husband has been very enveloped and embracing my culture and all of that. That's a whole nother story. But as I was telling him, he took a very profound pause and reflection and looked at me and said, and he knew this for years, but I think it finally hit him once he realized my dad's story. He said, so much tragedy and death had to happen for you to be my wife, for me to have the family I have. If it wasn't for your dad's bravery, I wouldn't have the life that I have today. And that became the premise of our movie. So the movie will explore an alternate universe where the genocide has not happened.
Oh, wow.
And what does that look like for our family, for
Wow.
my husband? So I'll leave it at that. So it's a little bit
That's
of a cliffhanger, but we really want to pose the thought that if the Holocaust didn't happen, what would the world look like, right? If
right.
the Armenian genocide never took place, what would Armenia look like? What would the people of Armenia look like? What would the world look like, right? Because you have these mass migration
Right.
after war and after genocide and after conflict where people get dispersed all over the world, right?
Right.
So that's really, I'm a big believer in influencing and inspiring people through storytelling and through movies and through film. I think it's a powerful tool that the left uses a lot to
Right.
propagandize our population.
You've got to
We
counter the
have,
culture. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
we have to play in that same arena, and we have to do it better. And we have to be better storytellers.
Well, you saying that you were born during this whole process. Had you been born on the other side where your father was coming from, one of the things that I learned was that this is the crazy stuff that people don't understand when they fight for something with only one-sided information. Okay, people will say women have the right to work. Well, what that meant in Cambodia during this time is that they would take their babies,
Mm-hmm.
hold them by their
Absolutely.
feet, and I've got some images here.
Yeah.
So they'd take their babies
Mm-hmm.
and then they would take them out to what's called the killing tree.
Yep. That tree is still there. You can actually visit that tree.
And if
It's
you read
been
that, if you read that, it says killing tree against which executioners beat children.
Mhm.
That is
And you know
That's
why?
what happens when you fight for women's rights without
Mhm.
understanding that when they say every woman, with equality, every woman has to work. So one of the things that happened, and I think I'll leave it on this picture for a little bit,
Yeah.
because I think it's important that people
Yeah.
understand that ideology, when you're ideologically driven, you let go of logic. You fall
Mhm.
into emotion. A person becomes this is something I've just recently really been thinking about. Our young people are either being taught to be the proletariat
Mhm.
or apathetic.
Yeah.
And so what happens is people who don't understand what they're arguing for, which they don't when they have social and emotional learning, right?
Mhm.
The whole point of that is to pump into them a one-sided view
Yeah.
and to
Yeah,
say,
it's
yeah,
emotional blackmail, it's manipulation, it's poisoning their minds, and it's dehumanizing people so that it when you ask, like, how could this have happened? How could people have turned on each other? How could people kill babies, right?
right.
You become so poisoned and it's brain rot. I don't know how else to describe it, right? And you are willing to commit atrocities that you would never have ever considered before. And the reason why it's called the killing tree and what they were doing to children and using the tree as a weapon to it's because they were trying to save the bullets. They didn't have enough bullets. And so a lot of the killing in Cambodia was done through machetes, through smashing people, with whatever objects they could find because there just wasn't enough bullets. So they were saving artillery.
And that's the same thing with the reason that it's called the killing field. In a documentary I watched right before, there was a woman and she was a teacher and she had to hide the fact that she was a teacher. So she had
Hmm.
to pretend to be a farmer, or the farmer class, and she tried to pick up their accent and behave the same way they did. First thing they did is they took away their clothes so that they could all be, quote, equitable.
Yeah.
Please
Yeah,
listen.
no more individuality. You're not to allow to have an individual identity.
In other words, known as the warmth of collectivism.
Mhm.
I'm still getting over a cold, so I stumble.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but so what they did is they took their clothes. Remember, as Seek said, they were they were pretty westernized.
Yeah.
They were pretty glamorous. Not glamorous, but modern.
Yeah, fashion was a big part of Cambodian culture, music and art and film. We were thriving in all these different areas. The king of Cambodia was actually making a national effort to modernize Cambodia with architecture, like I said, with film and music. And
Yes,
yeah, what they did was they made you dye your own clothes black. So everyone was in these black pajamas. It was something very dystopian. If you look at pictures of
yes,
Cambodia, when the Khmer Rouge took over and you look at pictures prior, completely two different things,
right. And
two different
and the
societies.
crazy thing is that a lot of people don't believe it. Like even posterity, right? Like
Hmm.
they'll grow up and they'll go, "Oh, I wish that that's the way. I wish I never came to America," because their kids are absolutely taught to hate America. And that's something that other countries have been doing for decades,
Yeah.
teaching people that America is the worst place on earth. Now it's come to America, and so many of our own children believe this, and they don't know
Hmm.
these stories. A couple of years ago, I've got a few friends who are dissidents, and they went to the Capitol and they said, "We believe that kids should be told the stories of communism." And this is here in Utah. And
Yeah.
the legislators said, "Not now. Now's not the time." And when I'm thinking, I had to listen, is it Khmer Rouge? Is it Khmer Rouge? I didn't even
Hmm.
know it because I'd never heard about it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those obscure things in history that no, like till this day, I could meet somebody and tell them I'm Cambodian and they have no idea what I'm talking about and where it's on the map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, yeah, I would have to look, I would have to search
Hmm.
on the map to be able to find it because we don't know these stories. And these stories are so important because history obviously repeats it.
Hmm.
One
Yeah.
of the things that I wanted to talk about is how young the soldiers were.
Hmm.
Look at these kids.
Yeah.
What is the difference between, well, they're steps away from kids walking out of school protesting. And what I mean by that is this morning I saw a report of a teacher being beat up for wearing a red hat. The
Yes, I
students,
saw that.
the students were wrong.
Hmm.
Wasn't He wasn't some far right guy. He wasn't even a Trump supporter, which I would say are two different things. But he wasn't that. And they
But
beat
even if he was, we are treading into dangerous territory when children band together and become a frenzy of a mob that
Yes,
they can assault a complete stranger
yes.
and not think that there are consequences to that. We're supposed to be a country of laws, you
Right.
know,
And
and we
it's
are literally
Go ahead.
ushering in the red guard, the student revolution. That's we've radicalized our not we. Let me rephrase it.
Right.
These people, these ideologues have radicalized, have infiltrated our education system, has infiltrated every institution in American society to destroy us from within using our youth to do it. It is the same playbook, and we are watching it play out. And I don't think the majority of this country even understand what we are facing at this moment.
No, and when you say the dreaded C word, when you say communism, people turn off, "Oh, that would never happen
Mhm.
here." Well, if you yesterday in my class, I was teaching my high school class, and I put up all the things that Lenin did and at the ages of which he did them. So like 11 to 14 years old, they started the indoctrination. 14 to 26, you had to prove your loyalty or you couldn't get a job. You couldn't go to university. You couldn't progress.
Doesn't that sound familiar in
Some
recent years, what we've had to deal with?
And that's what I was doing. I said, I'm going to list these things. You tell me when you've seen them. And
Hmm.
quite honestly, most of my kids hadn't seen it because they're in a bubble,
Yeah.
right? And I'm trying to open up that bubble because I do worry that when they get to the university, people will fish for them. They will look
Yeah.
for those kids who grew up in a bubble and say, "How can I break you?"
Hmm.
Which seems to be a massive target here.
Yeah. I mean, Utah is uniquely in its own kind of bubble, if you want to say. People
Yeah,
think that, because of, the religious background of a lot of people in Utah and everything, that Utah is kind of a safe, conservative state. It's the state that went the bluest in the last election than
right,
any other state in the country.
right. Well, and we do currently have a young man who is Muslim running unopposed, and the things that he promises sound like Minnesota.
Hmm.
And we do have this guy. Uh, we just elected a senator, a congressperson called called Nate Brown, but we call him Nate Clown because
Hmm.
he's pushing for all of this stuff. And again, I almost can't blame them because they've been miseducated.
Yeah. Well,
It's
they've been taught to hate this country. They've been taught that the system is so unfair, which is complete opposite of what it means to be an American.
right,
I have so much gratitude and appreciation, and I am just so proud to be an American. And I will scream that everywhere I go. I've sat on panels. So I sit on the board of Young Americans Against Socialism. It's an organization that tries to educate around these issues. I've sat on panels wherever I can speak. Obviously, you and I met through Beneath Sheep's Clothing and filming that. But it is scary how easy it is to tell somebody, I can give you something for free because the system has been unfair to you. When America is the greatest country and still is and always will be, if we can preserve it, the land of opportunity. We all have the opportunity. I am a refugee from Cambodia. I grew up in the projects of South Central LA my whole entire childhood. We were on welfare and food stamp. We were not the successful immigrant story that people tend to hear about. We were actually one of the very groups of immigrants that struggled economically. My parents never learned to assimilate and speak English, partly because they kept putting themselves in environments where they had a lot of people that speak their language.
right,
The Cambodian immigrants that did become successful were the ones who lived away from their own community. They were the ones that were forced to speak English, were forced to start businesses, were forced to find ways to succeed. And I don't say that to shame my parents at
no,
whatsoever. What I've learned from my parents, my mom and dad are the most tenacious people with an entrepreneur spirit. Had they been in the right environment, my parents would be very successful business people. My mom was like a hustler. She always had little side gigs and she could make money on the side and do all sorts of stuff. But growing up that way, I didn't allow that to shape my future. I
yeah,
understood, despite how I grew up, that this was still the land of the opportunity, that I could find my way out of this, that I don't have to repeat the cycle. I remember promising myself that I would never be on welfare. I had to actually, um, you know, benefit from the system later on in life because my husband and I both lost our jobs, 2 months apart, but that's a whole nother story. But
but
the
it was
point I'm
a
trying to
stepping stone. It's
yeah,
not
the
a
point I'm trying to
problem,
make is
right?
that
Yeah,
you can pull yourself up by your bootstrap, right?
right.
Teach yourself, surround yourself with the right people. There's so many ways to pull. And look, I'm just giving you my experience, right? But look at all the examples we have of the Oprahs and the LeBron James and like all these people who have found so much success in America. If it wasn't for the American economic system and capitalism, most people would not have the upward trajectory, right, to get out of poverty. No other country does it the way America does it. No other country, hands
The
down.
crazy thing is that those people that you just mentioned, Oprah and LeBron James,
Mhm.
they still see themselves as victims.
Yep.
They wouldn't agree, but that is all they're constantly saying all the things that are wrong. They believe in freedom
Mhm.
of culture and they push that narrative. Um, and I think that that's what happens a lot of times when immigrants come here. They come here with all the hope and all of the Statue of Liberty. Ooh, I'm going to be an American. And then immediately somebody gets their claws into them and says, you don't need to assimilate,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
keep them. And the reason why is because then they're good pawns.
Yep.
And I
Yeah.
can't today, especially as we've got protesters out there getting killed for stupid things, stupid prizes, in my opinion. Sorry.
Mhm.
But as we see that happening, I don't understand how people can't see that they're nothing but pawns.
Yeah, they're useful idiots. That's the term that's being used when you're being
Yes,
indoctrinated into this ideology. It is not for your benefit. It is for the collective agenda, whatever that end game is. And that end game is authoritarian, it's control,
yes,
it's all these things. And you like you said, you're just a pawn in their whole entire agenda. And sadly, people don't see that and they don't realize that. They think they're revolutionaries, they think they're on the right side of history. They're told they're fighting for a bigger cause.
right.
Um, but they're being used.
Well, and let's just talk about end games because I learned some things about Pol Pot, and I'm just gonna say he was not very smart.
No.
I mean, he
I
sorry.
mean, how do you take a
It took him
country
2
how do you
additional
take a
years.
country that was on the edge of modernization, right?
Yes.
Cambodia, before the communists take over, Cambodia was considered the pearl of Southeast Asia, like the Paris of Southeast
Yeah,
Asia. That was what it was coined to be. And he took a country that was on this upward trajectory and basically took it back to the Stone Ages
and
and completely destroyed it.
the crazy thing is that he was wealthy himself.
Hmm.
And if
Yeah,
had he not been wealthy himself, um, he wouldn't have had the opportunities that he had,
yeah.
and those opportunities so here's the thing, it took him 2 additional years to graduate elementary school,
Hmm.
and the only reason that he was able and he was selected now this is important, he was selected with a group of people to go to another country and to study Marxism.
Yep.
Now people will say I was listening to a kind of liberal podcast and they were like, "He didn't really embrace Marxism, communism's not really been tried, right?" Um, but he had all of this privilege, and then he
Hmm.
came back and destroyed
Yeah.
so
Well,
many.
so because Cambodia has such a strong relationship with the French, the largest population outside of Los Angeles of Cambodian immigrants is Paris, is France.
Right.
So they have a very back and forth relationship between like students and going there for university and things like that. So he was privileged enough to go study abroad in France, but he got roped into the French Revolution ideology with the Communist Party, and
Right.
that's where he got his teachings from.
Well, and the same exact things are happening. The reason I think that it's important is that the same things are happening here. Kids are
Mhm.
going, like democratic socialists are taking trips to communist countries
Yeah,
and
Cuba,
learning why they're good,
China.
right? And then
Yeah.
they're coming back here and they're following into leadership positions. So
Mhm.
the
It's all strategic. It's all part of their plan. So
right,
the Democratic Socialist Party of America is purposely infiltrating the Democratic Party
yes,
in order to take over. They know they can't be their own like how we have the Libertarian Party.
right.
The Democratic Socialists are smart enough to infiltrate the Democrat Party, and they are just basically destroying the Democratic Party from the inside, and they are running their radical candidates. And that's why all of us are seeing we don't recognize the Democrat Party anymore because it's been taken over by the Socialist Party.
But I would argue that they're also the smarter ones also jump into the Republican Party. There's a ton of
Oh yeah.
people who are progressive and have the same exact ideas. They have this,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to
Yeah, we had
white
to recall a city council member in next door in Mesa because she came in as a Republican
yeah,
and she is so far from that. Yeah,
yeah,
Turning Point recalled her, successfully recalled her, and we got somebody else in a special election place. But they're running in these local races all over Arizona. They've done it in Colorado. There's a book called The Blueprint where the Democrats basically flip Colorado within one election cycle.
yes. I
Yeah.
just want to answer a couple of these questions as we're going. So we've got just curious, where did he get his wealth from? Do you know where
Hmm.
Pol Pot got his wealth from?
Well, I know growing up, his parents like they owned like some land, right? So they weren't peasants; they were landowners.
Well, and for generations.
Yeah.
So he was the very wealthy landowner
Hmm.
that they went out and killed.
Yep.
That's what he was.
Yeah.
So, and I shouldn't laugh, but it's just the
But that's how
hypocrisy.
twisted the thinking is. It's
Yeah,
so twisted. It's like they will adopt an ideology that goes against their very own existence.
exactly. Exactly. But the thing is that they are the people who get the lamb's blood. They're the people who
Hmm.
get the Passover. Oh, don't touch me. Everybody else is bad, but I'm the good one, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I that is a hard that's a hard thing to accept because I just look and I go, man, so what they did is they took all of the people in the city and they evacuated them out and made them live like rural people. And if I
Mhm.
understand right, they brought the rural people in, or did they leave that like, because I've seen pictures where it's a ghost town, but was it left as ghost towns for months or years, or
Years, yeah.
did they
Almost 4 years. They never returned until the fall in 19, until what I consider the liberation by the Vietnamese army in January of 1979. So they emptied out the city, and the country folks were already in the country, and they started to divide people and put them
oh,
into these labor camps. I actually need to look more into that specific part of this, but
yeah,
yeah, it was 2 million city people that they emptied out into the countryside.
right.
Mhm. So
Um,
nobody was occupying the capital for almost 4 years
so what
as a
about
ghost
people
town.
like Pol Pot and the elites?
Yeah, so
How were
he
they living?
it that's probably the most interesting thing about Cambodia compared to, like, other revolutions. Pol Pot was living, like, pretty modest in the jungle. Like, he wasn't living in some kind of mansion, driving fancy cars or anything like that. So he was actually, to his credit, kind of living the way you would expect these type of, like, dictatorship to live based on their ideology. They weren't like amassing wealth, mansions and luxury cars or anything like that. So that I will say that's the difference between that and say Cuba and say, Russia and some of the other
China,
countries.
yeah,
Mhm.
okay. Yeah, I did not know that, so
Yeah.
that's an interesting thing. Let's go back to what the kids were learning, and did the kids become soldiers, or was it too short of a time for that to happen?
No, I will say they manipulated. I remember watching a documentary. This was like I was in my 20s, watching a documentary of and it was documenting a 13-year-old who had been ordered to kill. He slaughtered and killed over 2,000 people within a week time, including his own parents. Um, First, just shooting them with a gun, and then, they would run out of bullets and they would find other ways to kill people. But he was so brainwashed that children were turning on their own parents. And I remember reading one specific story. I mean, everybody was ratting on each other. That's how they keep the system the way it is. Keep people living in fear because you never know who is listening to you and who is going to rat you out to the Angkor, which is like the state, right? The heads of the state
Right.
and the
Now,
people running these labor camps.
can we pause that just for a second?
Mhm.
Because I really love to draw the parallels between what's happening today and what's happened then. So we have an app, I think you guys have it in Arizona too, the Safe app. So
Yes.
here it's called Safe Utah, right? And
Hmm.
what it does, the first thing is that it encourages students to report on each other. So
Wow.
so there are some radical leftists, one person who has said that the Safe Utah app is the best, quote, anti-racist tool available. And I don't think that's how it was designed, but that's what happens. And so the kids are being taught to report.
To
I
tattle on each other. Yep.
Right, or not even just tattle on each other. They're taught that the way in which they do it is actually helping.
Hmm.
Nobody knows your friends like you do. You know, your friends
Hmm.
will trust you. People don't talk to their parents anymore, but their peers, they have an influence. So what will happen is I had a parent who reached out to me because a kid had an earache and another kid saw it and thought, From somewhere they drew, these are drama kids, and
Their own conclusion.
they drew from earache to suicidal ideation.
What?
And all of the sudden, counselors are there asking the kids, "What's your relationship with your parents like?"
Oh,
And so they don't even know that that's where this is headed. And I really,
mhm.
the thing is that so many people, I don't even know if they're the useful idiots, because I feel
Yeah.
like the useful idiots are the ones who push the rhetoric. But then there's this
Mhm.
other group of people who inadvertently adopt the ideology. I've had
Yeah.
people who've said the most woke progressive things, and then when you call them out, they're like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a conservative."
Mhm.
They genuinely do. They're like,
Yeah.
like
Well,
you
they think they're
said,
being compassionate. They think they're being a good,
right,
No, I mean, there's so many ways to twist a lot of this too, and I love that you're bringing and correlating like what we are living through. I will never forget the first time I had an inclination that the state was overstepping the relationship between parents and children. My daughter was 7 at the time. We had just moved to Redondo Beach in California, and I was at her pediatrician's office. And in the questionnaire, it had the first time I had ever seen it. Do you own guns?
right,
Right?
right,
And and yes, we did because my husband, but
right,
I looked at my daughter. From that point on, I told my kids, you are never to share what goes on in our household with
right.
teachers, with anybody outside of our house. Do not tell them what's going on. And I don't mean that in a way where we're abusing our children. I'm like, it's none of their business if we own guns. It's none of their business if we are this or this or that. So I remember looking through that going, I'm not answering any of this. I'm
Uh-oh, lost you. I'm sure she'll jump back on. But yes, there are surveys that are intentionally invasive. So what happens in these surveys is people, your kid goes in, they think they're answering, maybe they're answering just, what was your week like? How did you feel? They're checking in emotionally, right? Let me just add Seek right back in.
out. I'm back on.
Yep. So, um, so yeah, I was just telling people that, yeah, these surveys, they ask all sorts of questions that you don't think would ever be asked in school. Most parents think schools are neutral, and part of that is because there are some educators who will lie.
Mhm.
They, if
Yep.
they're ideologically captured, they will lie.
Which a lot of them are. We're seeing more and more activist teachers. The days of teachers just being teachers, we are seeing it more and more. And it's so sad because it's giving good teachers such a bad name.
Right,
And I have to be very careful. In making my daughter is in public school. Mom. A lot of the women in Mom Army are homeschool moms, alternative school, private school, religious schools, and things like that. I'm actually the one, like, few parents in our group that are actually sending their kid to public school. But I feel good about it because we really do have open conversations with our children. They're equipped, to deal with a lot of this. She is always supposed to let me know if something's off or if conversations that don't sound right or feel right for her. She knows exactly what to do. So for that, and I just want to equip her. She's going to be out in the real world. She's going to be dealing with people with different mindsets and different ideologies. She's got to be able to navigate that for herself, as an adult. So I don't want to shield her too
mhm,
much, but I've talked to parents who their kids get completely captured.
mhm,
And, Christian families who come from very solid
mhm.
religious or faith forward foundations, and still their kids get completely warped into these ideologies. I don't have that fear about my daughter. She's a feisty one. Like, so I worry about other people
I mean,
engaging with her than the other way around.
I still have that fear because, as I've said recently, that apathy thing is real. And so
Mhm.
what I've realized is that, because again, I live in rural Utah. So, you look at these kids and you go, "Oh, there's no way we're going to get them on the woke train."
Yeah.
And there isn't. But what you can do is get them to not care at all.
Yeah.
And that
Absolutely.
that I think is another tactic. And I think what's important about that is is that in these wars, in a cultural revolution, the apathetic do not fare well, because
Mhm.
one of the things I was learning about Cambodia was that they would kill the children who couldn't work. They would kill the elderly. They
Yeah,
would
the
kill
weak.
any dissident. If you
Mhm.
said no to something, they would kill you, even if because they did, they would come out and they would just assign people to be married to each other.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
they committed fornication at the wrong time, they could be killed for that publicly. And
Mhm.
one
Oh,
story,
yeah, they would do public things to put
yes,
fear into everybody, and that was how they kept control, right? I remember reading one horrific story where a mother was in Southeast Asia and Cambodia, there are mango trees just growing everywhere. Like, you can literally feed yourself from the land because there's coconut trees, there's mango trees, like, like you can feed
paradise.
yourself, and there's rivers and streams and fish and all this other stuff, right? If you were ever caught, she had grabbed a mango off a tree and ate it. Her own child reported her to the state, and they killed her. And when they killed her, in order to prove that the kid was right, this is so graphic, but I want people to understand, like, this is how how dark
Ideology.
it gets.
Mhm.
Yeah, how dark it gets. They cut her stomach open to see if there was a mango in her stomach to prove that she did commit that crime.
Yeah, they were cutting the livers out, and they told, I don't know if you know that saying, but they would say something like, "It doesn't cost us anything to keep you alive." Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I know, yeah. I forget the exact phrase or the exact quote, but it
Yeah,
it 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 cost them nothing to, yeah, to keep you, and basically cost them nothing to kill you. It's like
exactly.
either way, it doesn't matter.
And they would say that to them regularly, and
Mhm.
that I think people need to understand is how powerful fear is,
Yeah.
because people keep their mouths closed because of fear. Now, I want to show you this photo again. And I specifically chose this one because it reminds me of something that I regularly think about. And that is a government strong enough to give you everything you want. You guys, we are far more, even as conservatives, we are far more socialist. We want to be given things. We want to be taken care of. We think we deserve things. Okay, when I think about the Minnesota fraud, I think, well, so I don't have to pay taxes this round, right? Right? Like,
Mhm.
what, how can you
Wouldn't
make,
that be nice?
you know, but that's how we think. We're far more socialist. But what you need to
Mhm.
realize is that when you give the government that much power, this is what happens. Those are
Yeah.
guns that they take. And when they take your guns, then you live like this.
Mhm.
Then you
Yep.
live like this. We're your own babies. And look at those little kids back there. They just take them away. And what's this guy doing? Well, he's macheting them. That's what's going on. When you say, government, please take care of me, oh, they will, until you become like Seek and I, until you become a dissident.
Mhm.
When you become a voice that says, oh, yeah, so we're not going to do that, they get rid
Yeah.
of you. And I want to hit on some of the things that have been said recently. Nurses have said, I'm not going to give anesthesia
Yeah.
to conservatives.
Mhm.
Okay. Um,
'Cause they deem you the enemy.
yes, but
Yep.
that's where we're at, and we need to not pretend that that's not where we're at.
Yeah.
And the reason I know this is because I had a nurse. I know it's true, and I know it's true right here because I had a nurse call me and say, I have to do a DEI training for continuing education. To continue being a nurse, I have to take this training.
Mhm.
And you look at that and you go, I mean, I made a post the other day and I said, look, you guys created something where I'm far more cautious about who I see for my medical care
Oh,
than I
yeah.
ever was before. And you created that. So while you create this culture of we are always right and you can't question anything, because that's what they're doing. That's what
Mhm.
authoritarian is.
Yeah, and it puts people in fear. I mean, look, I'm a pretty bold, outspoken, vocal, stand up for what's right kind of person, But I will tell you, I had such a blind trust in our medical system. I had questioned everything except for the medical system. So go
Yeah,
figure, right? And I have not. I am terrified. Speaking of fear, of walking into a hospital
yeah,
because of the radicalization of our medical staff and field. I don't ever want to put my family in that position where I have to question if this person is going to, um, honor their oath to do no harm. That they would give people treatment regardless. First of all, how is that? And how is that nurse going to even find out what is he going to do? Go Google you to see
yeah,
what your political. So my friend
yeah.
Elena, she did a
That's
post about it. She
exactly
said, "So could we go Google the doctors before we go into surgery to figure out what their ideology is
right.
before we say, dude, like where are we headed with this?"
That's exactly where we're headed. I've got an airplane to get on tomorrow, and I promise you, the thing that they hate about what Charlie Kirk said is true.
Mhm.
I look at my airplane and I breathe a sigh of relief when the guy is 50 or above, male, and ideally Caucasian. And that is
Yeah.
not something I ever thought of before, ever. I used to be like, wow, that person, and this is stupid too, right? This
Yeah.
person achieved something. Who knows? It's like I didn't, because that's what we're taught. We're taught
Mhm.
minorities always start out life poor, which
Yeah.
is
Well,
true
we used
here.
to be on merit. We were a merit-based society. It was the best, the cream of the crop rise to the top. The best basketball player
Right.
makes it into the NBA. The best, whatever becomes a
Yeah.
doctor. The best. So, but because of all the DEI madness, we don't have that merit system anymore. We do, and affirmative action. I grew up in affirmative action era. Where you were given, you know, a way to jump in front of the line to get accepted in schools and scholarships and all these things, even though your GPA might not be up to par or whatever.
Right.
We have to get back to a system where we are not looking at people's race, not looking
Right.
at their skin color. Like we should have a colorblind society,
Right.
honestly.
Right. And the
And
idea,
that's how it was for me growing up. I have friends from every background,
right.
every political, every race, religion, you name it.
Right.
That never became a factor.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm the same way. Like, I've never cared.
Mhm.
That's it. Like, are you a good person? Awesome.
Yep.
And now I am very cautious. I'm like,
Mhm.
I mean, when even like when I go places and people are like, I want you to speak at this or whatever else, I'm like, sure, I will. Um, I'll just perform in character. Don't tell anybody my name before I get there.
Yeah.
There are people that I'm afraid of,
Mhm.
but even though you're afraid, you still do it. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. I guess in terms of, because we have about 7 minutes. Um, the thing that when I think about what our children are being told, when they're taught a worldview, when they're used as pawns, we are stealing their lives from them.
Yep.
Um, I mean, and for us to pretend, it is extremely arrogant to pretend that adopting the ideas, which is what we're doing, adopting the ideas of um of Marxism isn't going to end like this. We can say whatever we want, but we have people saying, so just take this as another thing from Julie's film, okay? But take where the people are, where the more extreme churches are taken down, okay?
Mhm.
And they're taken down without due process. Regardless of how you feel about those people isn't the point. The point is that they didn't have due process. Now, what happened is that in people's minds, they said, well, it's okay because they were extremists. But now they've
That's
changed.
all subjective.
Exactly. Now they
Mhm.
choose extreme. A regular
Yeah.
person who goes to a regular open church on Sundays is now extreme
Mhm.
if they don't bow at the altar of state ideology. And
Yeah.
state ideology is, Hillary Clinton is queen, which
Mhm.
And
Well, I mean, like down to, since getting more vocal in the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, I've been very independent in my thinking. I consider myself a libertarian, independent.
yeah,
I've always been very aware and very knowledgeable when it came to a lot of these issues from early on. But I find myself I'm called a Nazi. I had a blog written about me calling me a Nazi.
yeah,
And here I am, the child I'm a refugee, child of an immigrant that escaped genocide
right.
and Cambodian. I'm colored,
I
right?
know.
I'm tan, I'm very, but it doesn't matter. I have been called every name in the book. I've been called, a Nazi, whatever. I mean, it
It's their
it
perspective, and it's whatever they say. The scary thing is that whatever they say, a lot of these "theys" are in education.
Mhm.
I think one thing that
Well,
is really
education
important.
is they're just the most indoctrinated.
Right, but I think one thing that's really important from your point of view that you've said before is that protecting kids shouldn't be political.
Mhm.
You know, um, these shouldn't be right or left issues. The problem is that the people who are saying some people need to face tribunals based solely on the fact that they support legal immigration,
Yeah.
or they support having borders, they should face tribunals. That's only coming from one side.
Well, here's the thing. We just went through 4 years of an administration that was weaponizing the government against its own citizens
Right.
on every level.
Right.
Parents were being called domestic terrorists by the DOJ, by Merrick Garland's DOJ,
Right.
right? Um, you have the J6ers, no due
Right.
process, just thrown in jail, right? You have
Including
all
reporters, by the way.
Yep. Yeah. You have all these instances. And so we were living it. How soon shall we forget that we had an administration that was very authoritarian, you
Right.
know,
Right.
um, canceling churches, all
The issue
sorts
is
of stuff.
propaganda, though. Right?
Yep.
The issue is
Hmm.
propaganda. The media won't cover any story unless it looks bad. That's that stuff where they're looking for beautiful trouble.
Yeah.
Again, and then what do they do with that beautiful trouble? They put it in front of our kids.
Hmm.
They tell them these one-sided narratives, and that's what I mean, and that's why I chose to call this "Teach the Children Well." Hi, everybody. I see you in the threads there. Yes, I agree. So tired of words being thrown around so much to the point.
Yeah,
And
they
I
keep
think that
changing the definitions. They keep minimizing things, and then
right,
it's like what's up is down, what's down is up. It's like it's all of it, and it's coming at us from every direction and
right,
so fast. Like we are in such a state of chaos and confusion,
right,
and with social media and every information at the tip of our fingers, we don't know what's true, we don't know what's false. It is part of the plan to really remove us from connecting with each other and connecting with our humanity,
right,
teaching our children to love themselves
right,
for who they are. It is disassociating them from their true self, right? That's why you have the gender ideology stuff. You have so much stuff coming at our kids. And I will leave everybody with this. I really want us to get to the place where we are not looking at each other like enemies. And I don't know how we get back to that. I don't know, because our
yeah,
the other side, and I hate it because there are sides, there are
right,
clear lines being drawn. My husband and I talk, how do we compromise with people who think mutilating children is okay? How do we compromise with
right.
people
You
who
don't.
think pedophiles and predators could be reformed? How do we
Right,
compromise with people who think that anybody is welcome in our country? You
right,
know, how do we compromise with a a worldview and an ideology that goes against our values? I don't know how we get back to that.
so what I think is that, and for good or bad, I do this. If there is no communicating with that person, if they do believe those things, then I step over them like an obstacle, and I look for the next person who's willing to listen this much.
Mhm.
They're willing to listen this
True.
much, if they're willing to see me as a human this much, then I'm gonna put everything I can into helping them, into seeing them that way too.
Yeah.
But there are the ideologues. I mean, I had a person last week who reached out on Facebook and wanted to be friends, and they had I am Antifa in their profile, and I was like, "Yeah, no," and they said, "Well, how come you didn't accept me?" And I was like, "Well, quite frankly, I'd like to keep my neck in place."
Yeah. Right?
I am so sorry, but that's where I'm at. Like, I don't want you screenshotting what you think is hate. I'm
Mhm.
not a hateful person,
Yeah.
and
And trying to use that against you.
sending it to a crazy person who's gonna do what they're going to do. So we've got a few things. Having young kids do walkouts last week was terrible. Yeah, I mean, it was little kids, like preschool.
Yeah.
And again, they're using them. And so I would encourage anybody who's watching this to go look at some of those Cambodian documentaries. They packed those kids up in trucks. They made
Mhm.
5-year-olds walk around in the fields and pick up manure for fertilizer. But then a story that I heard was this woman's daughter ate a cucumber when she was picking cucumbers, and they tied her to a tree and they beat her, and her
Mhm.
mom couldn't do anything to help her. And I'm gonna leave you with this. You guys, we can do something to help our kids.
Yeah.
We Last night I watched a Shakespeare play, so I'll just say we can screw our courage to the sticking place.
Mhm.
We can find it within ourselves to say, I know what comes next if I don't stand now while I can. While it might
Yeah.
be uncomfortable, while somebody might call me names and make a blog about me.
Yeah. I don't
Okay.
care.
I
You
mean,
know,
you do, it hurts.
the one thing that I will say, and when we're talking to parents, and people ask, raising my children in LA, they went to public school. I have very strong young men who are conservative, who are family first. They have values that we've instilled in them. I always tell parents, are you your children's biggest influence, or the outside world is your children's biggest influence? And until you can do that and make sure that your relationship with your kid is as tight as possible, and you give them the ability to empower themselves and to think critically and to be compassionate, but also don't, set boundaries. um, that is what we do. We raise strong
Yes,
children that become influence in their in their peer groups. you
yes,
know don't let your child be the one that goes along with the crowd. Let your child be the one that is willing to stand up by herself to do
yeah.
what's right.
And then the other thing is, I think, don't give up. I've
Hmm.
got a 17-year-old, and there are moments where it's just like the moodiness is real, and you just
Yeah.
go,
The
"Ah,
teen
I'm
the teen
done."
year is, yeah, I know.
And you can't be done, and that means that you need to cater to them for a little bit. You
Mhm.
know, you only sit down and watch the things they wanna watch, even if they're dorky. You
Yeah.
only whatever. You're eating
Keep the
pizza every
communication,
night
keep the
because you don't want
relationship. Yep.
pizza?
Keep building the relationship, especially in their teen
Yes.
years when they are trying to figure themselves out. So, um, yeah, I just hope that the more people are understanding what we are actually facing as a country,
Yes,
the sooner you accept what is happening, and the more you can start connecting with people
yes.
that are active, that are trying to sound the alarm, make changes, policy. I mean, I'm involved. Get involved wherever you can. Get
Right,
involved if it's and I know politics isn't the answer to everything. So I'm not preaching that we
right,
find solutions in other people. It really is about how
right.
we live and operate and within ourselves. But you can be a piece of the puzzle. You can be part of a solution. I don't want people to be black pill to think like there's no hope and there's no way out of this. We
Right.
really got to be operating from a place of hope and a place of finding solution and a place of building community and with like-minded people. And that's how we're
Coalition.
going to change a lot of things.
Yeah, so coalitions are vital. I was
Mhm.
listening to Carlin Borisenko. You can like her or not, but she has very valid information. But one of the things they said is that on these signals, They've got 80,000 people, and they are there for each other. We need to stop fracturing over teeny tiny disagreements.
Mhm.
The thing that we need to do is we need to commit to building the next generation of moral, just, virtuous people. That does not
Leaders, yeah.
necessarily mean religious. It just means
Mhm.
moral, just, virtuous. So we build that into the next generation and we commit to it. And if we find ourselves in some black pill place, as long as we're breathing, we have the ability to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So the last thing, Seek, and we did go a little bit over, but that's okay. The last thing is just talk tell the people about Mom Army and how they can find you and what they can do to support you.
Yeah. I mean, we started Mom Army in August of 2022, and we have every year we reassess, like, what did we do really well this past year? What is the future for Mom Army look like? We have found our evolution to be in a place of helping build the next generation of leaders, helping activate moms and dads. We have Dad Army too. We're in the middle of just like realigning, rebuilding, refining is the word that comes to mind. And so right now, we don't have a website up right now. We're in the middle of like revamping and all of that. But we're on Instagram. Find us on Instagram. That's where we mostly operate and post. So it's the.momarmy and the.dadarmy. Send me a DM.
I love
Um,
that you have dads too.
yeah.
It's
I think it's
vital.
important, like the moms have been at the forefront of a lot of these battles and these fights. My husband says this, and I'm gonna leave it with this. He says, "I'm so glad the moms are the ones that are in the fight right now, because if the dad comes in, it is gonna get ugly." So we want to be at a place where we can still make change and peacefully implement these changes.
Yeah,
We are seeing a lot of political violence, coming up from the other side. We
right,
cannot operate from the same place that they operate. We
right.
really have to figure out how to save our country without resorting to violence.
Great. And I'm just going to look a little bit here.
Mhm.
Um, whether you are a parent or not, yes. So I read Moms for America, as you can see in the back, and Utah specifically, but
Yeah,
they're
you
all
don't have to
over.
be a parent. We have
Exactly.
lots of people in our group that are not moms or
Yeah.
dads.
We
If
s- we
you
call
have a
them
love
mom.
for children,
Yeah.
you have a love for our next generation, for children, and for our country and our freedoms, that's it. That's all we
Yep.
require.
Yep. These kids need to be mentored by people who are based in reality and
Mhm.
love them. Those are the two things, and not love them in the creepy way.
Yeah,
So,
right.
but that is it. So, my friends, thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Seek, it's been wonderful to talk to you. You guys,
Thank you.
I have Will Roosh coming up with Paradox Academy.
Oh, yeah, he's a friend. He's part of our dad army.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So I have him coming up shortly, and Kelly Sky with A Time to Stand. So you guys, I'm trying to put out as much content as I can for as long as we can, because there may be
Mhm.
a time. I mean, there are celebrities right now saying they should be banned.
Yeah.
So we put out as much as we can, as fast as we can. And thank you so much. I really, really appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Carrie.
You're wonderful. So
Yeah, I love you and I respect everything that you do. And so the more we band together, the more we can really start to that's what the other
absolutely,
side does really well. They're very organized and they work together. We need to do more of that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyways, I hope you have a
Thank
great day.
you.
Thank you.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye-bye.